Welcome to DJ Tutorials, and this is a quick art critique from a Blender user who sent me their file. Okay, I am going to take a look at this session for you and give you some commentary while I just take a look at what you've done. So, first off, just taking a look at this, I would say that some of the stuff is a little bit complex for just a basic study. That's completely fine. And what I would do just to make this a little bit easier in the future when you want to test out some lighting situations, I would actually separate out your lights and your cameras and everything else to different collections and your objects to a different one, just so that you can keep that a little bit easier to move around. So first, I'm actually going to take all of your objects and I'm going to move them to a new collection, call them OBJs, turn that off. And since you use some meta balls here, I'm going to just grab these and I'm going to move them into the OBJs, just in case anything weird happens with your meta ball little fluid thing that you got going on. So then with all this stuff here, I'm going to move these into a new collection and call it old lights. Okay. And then let's take a look here. So camera's fine. I think your composition is all right, so we don't really need to do much with that. But let's do some changes to your lighting. So I would say that the best thing to do, number one, always, is to start with a environment light or an HDRI. So if you go in here, add HDRI, and let's just do this regular studio here, and you're going to get a nice, even overall environmental lighting setup here. So I think that that's a really good place to start with. Let me turn this off. And you can kind of get an idea about what all of your textures are looking like. It looks like there might be a little bit of an error there with a UV unwrap or something. I'm not really sure what's causing that. Um, let's take a close look. So, okay, let's turn on matte cap and change that to this. So it's not a shading issue as far as your actual object. It's more of something to do with your texture. So let's take a quick look at the texture. Let's do this. Grab this, unwrap, follow octave quads, even. Okay. And I thought I might have gotten it there. I would just say that in general, I mean, we don't see it from this angle here, but using these procedurals, just be careful when you're using them. Sometimes they have little screw ups like that, especially when you're using EV. Sometimes it calculates things a little bit differently. So now let's take a look at your background. So for backgrounds, when doing something like this, I prefer to um, make it a little bit more rough. Looks like you have 3 materials on here, so I'm going to just add some roughness. So a little roughness here and a little roughness. I'm not sure where that black is, and keep it, up a little bit higher. Now, one thing that you should add, in my opinion, to all of these is a layer weight. So this actually will calculate. So this layer weight here, what it does is you can see that it's based on how you're facing the object, it's adding this, dark effect. And the more angular, the more white, and the more vertical, I guess, or flat you are to it, the darker it gets. So what you do from here is you want to use this blend at about a 0.9-ish sometimes. It depends on how shiny your object really is. Take the facing, change it to a 0.9. You want to invert it. Throw this facing into the color. Take this color and put it into the roughness, and then view it through here. And what happens is, as you go lower, it's more reflective, and as you go higher or more flat to it, it's more diffused. And that's how, in reality, that's how these materials really work. So when we go in here, and we'll actually take this invert, we'll take a mix color, take this one, put it in the bottom, And since this is darker, see how that's darker? That's going to be the reflective bits, and the white is going to be the diffused. It's a little bit too uh, reflective right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this top color here as the all the way confused or diffused. And when we look through here, set this to multiply and then change the factor, you can see that it starts to add that that layer weight to the background. So that's going to give you a more realistic reflection for your background. I'm not going to deal with this yellow bit here, so don't worry about that. You can just kind of like copy and paste this. But this node setup is going to help you out a lot, and it's going to help you control how reflective things are. And like I said, in reality, the closer to an angle you get to it, the more reflective, and the more flat you are to it, the more diffused it actually is. So from there, let's do some lighting stuff. So before you do any lighting, in my opinion, you want to throw in the HDRI. Then you want to take the strength and put it down to 0 for the HDRI. Looks like we are not viewing through the proper thing here. So completely black, all right? Now from here, what we're going to do is we're going to add a couple of uh, we're going to be adding a couple lights. So there is a really quick way to do this where you like clamp it to certain things, but or a better way. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some area lights. So take this, move it up, and what you want to do is you want to set it over to where your camera is. Okay. And then you're going to take this guy right here, and you can either like rotate it and stuff manually, or you can take the little ball and put it on the object that you want to light it. And the lights should be, looks like you have it set to local up here. The lights should be above, or at least for this lighting setup I'm doing right now for this 3-point light, the lamp should be above your camera. So this one, I'm actually going to make the fill light. So we're not going to add any real luminance to that one yet. I'm going to take this ball here, put it here, and this one we're going to make our um, key light. So I'm going to, let me see, where's this one going? So it's currently in this collection up here, that's fine. But I'm going to call this one key light. And I'm going to put the power up to 5,000. And for the key light should be smaller and brighter than the fill light. So key light is small, and the size we're going to put down to a point, let's say a 0.1. And then for the fill light here, and so when you're doing your lighting also, what you'll want to do is make sure that you're looking at each one independently. So this one's really, it's the key light, meaning it's the brightest one. So it's hitting it with the most amount of light. I'm actually going to bump this up, I think, a little bit more to 60. Oops, that's too much. 6,500. Okay. So I'm going to turn that one off. Okay. And now for the fill light here, which I'm going to angle it a little bit more down, so it's kind of like meeting that box there. I am going to, with these ones, the fill lights, they should be larger, and so a larger size, and they should not have as much power. So let's set this, and let's get some more going on here. So a fill light is what it sounds like. It should fill in the sort of like the gaps of where the lighting is missing. And I'm going to set this to a 2. That might be too much. So 1.5, a little bit less. Scale it there. And let's maybe take this to let's do 2000 watts. Okay, so we have the key light, brightest one, and then we have I'm going to call this one the fill light. Turn that one on. So now it's being lit up like that. And then the last thing is we're going to add our HDRI. So that is a 3-point or a basic 3-point lighting setup, or a 2-point lighting setup, I should say. The 3-point comes in when you add the light in the back, and we will add that right now. So I'm going to set the cursor there, add a point, pull it up, and pull it back over here. And again, for the same thing here, or rim light, whatever you want to call it, turn these off and turn off the background. And we're going to take the rim light here and we're going to pop this way up. So we'll go that big and then set this to a really low radius size, and then we'll kind of like pull it down as we need to. So let's delete that. Pop it up a little bit more like that. So that's getting the top edges and all that kind of stuff there. And now let's turn on all of our other lights and our area light. This is what would be probably referred to as a high key lighting setup because everything is really, really bright. You can, of course, adjust this by taking your lamps and reducing them down. So let's say this one instead of 65 is 4500, and this one here, let's say, is this 1000 here, and this light here, let's set this to, let's say, 4000. And the HDRI, let's reduce that a little bit, and so that's what you get. The other thing about size, you can see this harsh shadow going on here. The size of your light will change how harsh that shadow is. So if you change this to, say, a 0.4, you'll see that it is becoming more and more, that edge is becoming softer. You also want to turn on over here with your settings, high bit depth, soft shadows, cube size, small. So the cube size here set to 64, cascade to 4K if you want a high res sort of like shadow. And you can see there, the shadows are much softer, and we should be able to see this setting change here. So generally, there should be more of a sharp shadow here. In cycles, we'll be able to see it, so I'll just pop over to that real quick. Okay. Look at the shadow here. And if I take the size and I put it up to a 1, you can see that it just got softer. And if I make this down to 0.001, oh wow, that goes really crazy. 0.01, oh, it's still pretty bad. 0.1, you can see that it's a bit sharper. So just keep that in mind when you're using these lamps, that is going to do some changes. I'm going to keep it in cycles because I think cycles looks a lot better for something like this, and I think you should be able to render it out okay, provided you're not using a crazy amount of lamps. Cool. So that's kind of what I would, say that you should start with, is how to do it with some really basic lighting setups. I would not do the kind of setup that you did because I don't think it really needs it. I think it better to try to use as few lights as possible because it actually increases the amount of time that it takes for you to render a scene without so much noise. And overall, I think you're going to have less issues by using less lights, and it gets you used to sort of like how you would actually shoot this in reality. If you had, like, nobody's really going to have 1,500 lights to throw into a scene. It's most likely going to be 2 or 3, maybe 4. That kind of thing is a little bit more. It's a little bit more like you would expect to see it as far as how you're going to light it. And yeah, so that's kind of how I would start approaching this sort of thing. Um, I really don't think that it is worth it to throw a ton of lights into your scene to start with. So, you know, I don't know. Maybe that doesn't work for you, or maybe it does. I don't. I don't know. But that's just how I would sort of like deal with this. Now, the other thing that you talked about is coloring. So, what I would do instead of adding colors, use nodes, and you look for a thing called blackbody. Take this blackbody node and pop it into the color. And this is actual settings that you would see in realistic lighting. So, for example, a low temperature number is an orange light, and then anything higher goes to blue like the sky. Cool, so that looks all right. And what I will do from here is I'm going to go to the compositing, and it looks like you're using the denoise. That's great. And you want to throw a filter, a glare. Almost always want to do this. Fog glow, put that on here. Add a little bit of a punch to it, size 9. Mix -0.5 so it's not too glowy. Curves, there we go. Curves, and set this to film like. And I'll show you why we're doing this. So if we set this to be the viewer node, this is what we're currently creating as far as our image. And if we pop this open on the right, go to scopes, this waveform right here is showing you what your white and black values are. And if you look at the scopes as it is right now, there's a lot of white and there's not very much black. And what you usually want to see is a nice range here between the two. So that is a little bit more contrasty, which is nice because you get more darker blacks and some grays and some whites in there. And then from here, I would throw lens distortion, fit, take the distort to a 0.01, the dispersion to a 0.01, which will add just a little bit of a lens distortion to your image. Then a final color correction. And let's maybe bring down a little bit of the saturation. Something like that to make it a little bit more what you would expect to see in photography. 0.85 was good. Yeah, that's pretty good. And you can see the waveform here. If you look at this, it's not going to be that much different, but if you looked at that, and then we look at the waveform here, we brought the whites up a bit, we brought the blacks down a bit, and we created a little bit of variance between those. So you may like it, you may not. I don't know, but let me know what you think. And if you want me to take a look at anything else, I can take a look at it and let you know how I would sort of approach it. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe, and make sure that you hit the little bell icon to notify you when new videos are uploaded. And I will see you next time on DJ Tutorials.